Commissioner Sturm is on the way in, and we are recording and live streaming. So it is 7:01. You're welcome to call to order at your button.
Okay, thank you. 7:01. Welcome everybody, members of the public, members of the Planning Commission staff, to tonight's Planning Commission meeting, December 5th. Possibly the last one of the year. Not sure. I'm sure that'll come up later in our agenda tonight. But welcome everybody. We do have a full Planning Commission tonight. For members of the public who would like to participate in tonight's meeting, the agenda can be found on lovelafayette.org. And directions on joining tonight's meeting are on page 1 of tonight's agenda. Sorry, I meant to say the agenda is on lovelafayette.org. Directions are on page 1. So that we can go ahead and do a excuse me, a roll call. Commissioner, let me go through alphabet. Commissioner Farzan.
Present. Hi, everybody.
I didn't write it down first. Usually I write it down for the alphabetical order. Commissioner Heising.
Present.
Commissioner Mason.
Present.
Commissioner Sturm.
Present.
Vice Chair Labange.
Present.
And Chair Radnich. I'm present. Item 3 on tonight's agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Heising, second by Commissioner Farzan. Roll call vote. Commissioner Farzan.
Aye.
Commissioner Heising.
Aye.
Commissioner Mason.
Aye.
Commissioner Sturm.
Aye.
Vice Chair Labange.
Aye.
And Chair Radnich. Aye. Item 4, public comments. This is an opportunity, members of the public who would like to make a comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. If you would like to make a comment on an item that is on tonight's agenda, we'd ask that you wait for that item to come up. But I'll look to staff to see if there's any hands raised for public comments, item 4.
Seeing no hands raised.
Okay. Move to item 5, consent calendar. There's 3 items on the consent calendar. Draft meeting minutes from November 7th. A resolution for item 5B, which is the Wilder 55 LLC. R20 zoning, and then item 5C, it's for continuing the item on Oak Hill to December 19th. Is there a motion for the consent calendar?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Okay, thank you. A motion by Commissioner Heising, second by Commissioner Mason. Roll call vote. Commissioner Farzan.
Aye.
Commissioner Heising.
Aye.
Commissioner Mason.
Aye.
Commissioner Sturm.
Aye.
Vice Chair Labange.
Aye.
And Chair Radnich, I'm an aye. Item 6A, excuse me, continued public hearing. So item 6A is HDP 28-22 Holt, R10 zoning request for reapproval of the project with no modifications proposed at this time. So for the item in front of us tonight, we will, our charge tonight is to review the previously approved project, conduct a public hearing, adopt a Planning Commission Resolution 2022-15. We feel that's appropriate, finding the project exempt from CEQA and reapproving the project subject to conditions. Before we start, I would like to say, I assume there'll be a presentation by Renata, then the applicant will have an opportunity. We'll open it up to public comment. Just for the record, we have received public comment on this. I do want to acknowledge it. The commission received, I want to say it was around noon today that we received public comment that was submitted after the staff report. There were a handful, and then it looks like a couple more came in this evening around 4 o'clock. So we have received comments from Schwartz, Sardo, and a few others. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before I turn over to staff. So Renata, welcome.
Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. Before the commission again tonight is HDP 28-22, which is a request for the reapproval of a project, which would entail the construction of a new single-family residence on a vacant lot in the Hillside Overlay District. As required for vacant lots in the Hillside, this project was approved through a two-phase process after review by the Planning Commission, Design Review Commission, and City Council. The project is before the commission again tonight as the approvals expired and the applicant is seeking reapproval with no modifications. This item was last discussed at the October 17th Planning Commission meeting, and the commission directed staff to provide additional background on the project, which was included in the staff report for this evening, as well as conduct additional noticing for properties within 500 feet of the parcel and all properties on Northridge Lane. In total, notices were sent to 77 property owners, and staff received several public comments in opposition and some in support of the project, all of which were provided to the commission and many posted online. As there are no modifications proposed at this time, the staff is able to make all of the required findings for this project and recommends the commission adopt the resolution included in the staff report, reapproving the project. That will conclude my report if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you. I do see Commissioner Parson has his hand up, please.
Thank you, Chair. And Renata, I have a couple of questions. So the first one, obviously there are no changes, no modifications. So I'm trying to understand, are we looking at this de novo? Are we starting from scratch or not? It's a procedural question. So how am I looking at this?
So given, oh, Greg, do you want to answer?
Happy to. It is de novo. However, given that the Planning Commission and Design Review have both considered it previously, you're not obligated to undertake the full course of a item as if it were a new item. You can rely on the record that is to date. And so if you're familiar with the site, you can rely on the materials and your consideration to date. So hopefully that helps.
That does, thank you. So, and then the second question, has there been any change of opinion by the city attorney with respect to this lot?
No.
Okay, those are the two questions I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? We'll go Commissioner Heising and then Vice Chair LaBlanche.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Commissioner Farsan covered one of my questions regarding the attorney's position on the lot. And then my other question was reading through these comments from the public. There was one comment, I believe it was in Mr. Schwartz write-up. Is it an obligation of the city to call out any new ownership of the parcel? I mean, the applicant, I assume, are the heirs of the late Mr. Holt. So does that weigh into this at all anyhow?
It does not. An entitlement would run with the land and be irrespective of what individual or entity owns the property.
Okay, that's what I thought, and I just wanted it to be made mention of this just for the record and for the public to hear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Heising. Vice Chair LaBlanche, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. in reviewing the comments that came in, there was the Ned Robinson letter of July 2nd, 2008, and I'm pretty sure we had that before, but in rereading it in the third paragraph, I couldn't remember when it goes, this has to do with the city and the discussion of easements and being private or not. So I'm a little nervous to get into this, but I do think it's important. The part that I don't remember from before was the idea to, and it's the last sentence in the third paragraph. It says, "This is standard law and the standard practice of every municipality with which I am familiar in the Bay Area." And this is, from a person who I think would understand this better than I do. So my question is, irregardless of if this was brought up before, is there a response to that? Is that accurate? And if could that be parsed at all? So I understand the notion, and we kind of put that to the side, that that's a private issue that we're not dealing with. And the reason why the city would say, go forward now, versus what this is trying to say, which is, I believe it's saying that it should be waited on until that's dealt with. So I think that's for Greg. I think that's for you, if possible.
Correct. And I do recall that this letter was received and this item was discussed by the Planning Commission previously when the siting and massing was approved. And so I'd like to reread what and you said it was the third paragraph?
Yes.
Of the letter.
Yeah. And that was the last page of the,
yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I can't speak to every other municipality in the Bay Area. If it is substantially in question and there is substantial evidence to believe that a property owner does not have a right to build in a given area, we could ask for further information, clarification on that. I know that this topic has been adjudicated throughout this process extensively, and the city attorney has weighed in, and nothing has prevented, to my knowledge, those property owners who believe that they have rights over this property from filing an action to have this application stopped or otherwise halted to date. And so at this point, we would not recommend the Planning Commission take action to do so. It would be inconsistent with the Planning Commission, the city's prior actions on it. And there are, I believe, ample remedies through the court system if those property owners feel that they have the right and to stop the project.
Can I just a slight clarification on that?
Sure.
For me? I think I understand, but I want to just clarify. So what I think I'm hearing is, if there was something that was pending in litigation that pertained to this, that there might be the understanding that we let that work itself out before we take action on this. But to our knowledge, there is nothing in litigation pending, and we have no reason to believe that there's not the right for the property owner to make an application. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. I appreciate the answer.
Okay, thank you, Victor Lavange. Any other questions for staff? Okay, Renata is the applicant here tonight. Okay, we can welcome them.
Tim Ward is being brought in. And thank you for raising your hand again. I'll try it a second time. And Mr. Bowie is raising his hand. I believe he represents the property owner. Very good. Thank you, Renata.
Welcome. Can you hear us?
Mr. Bowie.
Oh, sorry, I'm still getting used to the Zoom process and my technological skills are somewhat lacking. Yeah, my name is David Bowie. I'm the attorney for the Holt family. I've been involved in this particular project previously, and obviously it's one that was approved previously as well. I know from the background comments that this is a project that could have simply been extended administratively for another year, but due to all the family circumstances, Mrs. Holt was unable to file the application for administrative extension, and that has resulted in the lapse of the earlier approval, and we're now back to a reapproval of the same project. And I would, keep my comments fairly brief. As a practical matter, this is exactly the same project that was already approved by the Planning Commission and the City Council. Nothing's changed either physically with respect to the project, the plans and specifications, or the overall circumstances. And nothing's changed in terms of the application of the city's ordinances and laws to this project. As a result, I would essentially say that there's no rational basis upon which this project could be turned down. I would also indicate that Lot 66 is a valid legal lot. And as such, there's the right to develop the lot in accordance with the regulations that are applicable to a development in Lafayette. The issue as to whether or not there might be some overall restriction on any development on that particular lot is a private matter. It is not a public matter. If the private individuals want to litigate something, they're welcome to do so. It's not at all clear that there's any kind of an easement that crosses the entirety of the lot anyway. The state of record with respect to legal descriptions and such is quite ambiguous, and if anything, it favors limiting any easement to 50 feet, which is precisely the width of easement that we've submitted in terms of setback and development of the home on the lot. I'd also indicate that the city records include an extensive analysis by Shell and Martin completed some years ago, which indicate quite clearly that there's no ability whatsoever to ever widen the paved portion of the existing street in any case, so that this is certainly a portion of property that could not be used by any of the individual claimants to pertinent easement rights. There is a right under the law to develop your property, and indeed, if there is some sort of an easement that overburdens the property, if there actually is such, and I would say that there is not, but if there actually was, the courts have been routinely entering judgments which limit the actual impact of an easement to the amount actually necessary, not to the excess areas which would not be affected by the easement in any case. So fundamentally, the city attorney has got it right. The city attorney looked at all these circumstances. The city attorney viewed this as a matter which the city is not directly involved in any fashion. It's a matter that may or may not arise at some future time, and it'll be dealt with if, as, and when that arises. And it's a project that has already been approved through a lengthy process. And I would simply urge you to go ahead and reapprove it because there's no reason not to. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank
Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, if you can just sit tight, Mr. Bowie, we'll open it up for public comment and then you'll have another 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Staff, can we please open the item for public comment? So this again is item 6A, the Holt property, lot 66, for anyone wishing to provide comment.
If you would like to comment, please go ahead and raise your hand and we will bring you in. Pamela Swartz is being brought in.
Good evening, Ms. Schwartz. Can you hear us? I think just unmute. We can see you and I think we'll be able to hear you in a second.
There you go.
Yeah, welcome. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, so good to see all of you guys again. We've been doing this for a while. You know, we and our neighbors have been opposing this Lot 66 application for 15 years. And as you mentioned, you know, tonight you are faced with reapproving the application, but we would like to ask you to slow down and not rubber stamp this application. Even though, as the applicant has said, nothing has changed in terms of the application, there are still very many good unresolved reasons why the Planning Commission and the City Council denied this application back in 2008. And while the latest application came forward with a smaller footprint, it is still too big for that sliver of land that we all know what it looks like, and it would greatly destroy our privacy. And there are good reasons why all of our neighbors are still opposing Lot 66 development. There's 3 letters in your packet tonight. There were 4 letters, 2 letters from the people on Sessions Road and 2 letters from some folks on North Ridge Lane that were in the November 7th packet that didn't quite make it to tonight's packet. The chair recognized them, but I would urge you to take a look at those before any decisions are made, because their voices deserve to be heard. Tonight, the sole letter supporting the application is from an old friend of Mr. Holtz, who has nothing to do with Lot 66. He doesn't live in the neighborhood. He won't be in any way affected by the development. And he says that this will be an asset to the community. And I just don't understand how that's possible when it's causing injury to 24 neighboring households. The proposed home poses traffic and fire safety. And I want to show the photos that I submitted to Renata earlier today. They show what happened today with a delivery truck getting caught and stuck on Sessions Road, blocking the road. I can't even imagine what it would be like to have a house and a driveway adjacent to Sessions Road. Renata, can you show those photos, please? And that's why the uphill residents have this deeded easement. And contrary to what Mr. Bowie said, we have provided the deeded easement to you on many occasions that is not ambiguous at all. It says that their easement is over, under, along, and through Lot 66. And the reasoning that was discussed earlier before about no action has been filed to litigate that easement, you know, it really, as normal homeowners, and most of them are elderly up there, it should not be upon the easement holders to have to prove their easement. I mean, it's like kind of a bluff poker situation. And I know there's rules and legal things, but to say that we have to litigate before you guys will stop action just seems unfair, unfriendly, and not in the community spirit. I would also like to mention that earlier, one of the commissioners said in the Wilder 55 case that I was listening to, that he thinks the neighbors would be glad that the lot's going to be improved. And we have shown you that we are all opposed. There's not one neighbor in favor of this development of Lot 66. So I urge you to vote no tonight.
Thank you for your comment. And I would just, sorry, was someone else talking?
Oh, no, my husband's going to.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to raise my hand next.
Okay, great. I do just want to acknowledge that, 1, thank you for your comment. 2, I did hear you say that I recognize the public comments received. So I do want to just clarify, by recognizing that we received them, that also I meant to imply or specifically say that we also had a chance to read them and review them. So all comments that were received for the original a month ago, right, for November 7th, and then anything for tonight, even the ones that came in after publication, the staff report. So just to make that clear for the record. Were there any, okay, thanks. Were there any questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you. And I see your husband. I think staff, is it okay if we just go ahead and move to Mr. Schwartz? Okay. Welcome, you'll have 3 minutes. And staff, sorry, if there's a way to turn down the noise on the timer, it's really jarring. Yeah, perfect.
Apologies, I've minimized it.
Great.
Very sorry about that.
Hi, I'm Jeff Swartz, 1139 Sierra Vista Way. I remember back in the early 80s when Pitar had passed, and I spoke, and we were all looking at the lot that Mrs. Ramorti and we talked to the city, and the city said, no, this lot can never be used or developed ever. It was originally proposed for a guard shack and a gate, and it was denied. We won that battle back in the early 80s. And so we just said, okay, we'll just maintain each side of it for fire and keep it an easement the way it is, because we knew the guard shack wouldn't go in there. And then this, of course, you know, the county took the water meter and deemed it an unbuildable lot. So we thought everything was fine. And then Mr. Holt picked up the lot from Pitar's estate for a song, trying to make a quick butt. And I hate to say that, but that's a fact. And I am concerned about the placement of the lot. You know, all the legalities and everything. And what you've done is, if you want to take the road out of there, put the house in the middle lot, I think that's a great idea. It's a perfect lot for that, but its use has been claimed. They put a road in there originally to develop the property behind it. And now you want to put this house on a steep, narrow portion right behind our house that gives me absolutely no privacy. I can't go in my patio and dine. It goes, the driveway, you have it set right on our edge of our home. The lights go by every one of my 4 bedrooms, up and down. The noise, it's literally feet away, because my house was built prior to the Sierra Vista Way subdivision and sits a mere 6 feet from the property line. And even though you move him over another 6 feet, that's too close to have, it just ruins my property for Holt's interest. And it's not right. It's just not right. And then the fire safety, you see what happens. Well, suppose there's a fire and you can't get people in or out. It's the only access. Everything is just obtuse reasoning on your behalf. I'm sorry, those of you who approve this, forget the legal things. Look at it strictly as a project. If Joe Blow came in and said, hey, I want to put a house here. No, my name's not Dick Holt. I'm just this guy. You would not even give it a chance. You wouldn't. There's so many variances. Everything about it is just wrong. And it's built in the middle of a drainage swale that massive amounts of water came down this last storm. And then it goes subterranean. And it's now, if he puts a home there with this big foundation, the water has to go around it. And it's not going to go under Sessions Road. It's going to go downhill another 15 feet. My house is 15 feet below his first floor. I mean, it's garage. It's going to go right down into my property. And I'm going to get surface water flooding. I'm going to get subsurface water flooding. You need to just vote your conscience on this. Forget the thing like Mark Mitchell did. Mark Mitchell said, it's just inappropriate to put a home here. It just doesn't work. It has nothing to do with legality. It's fine for a guard shack. Meet the parameters, put a guard shack in there, or a tiny house, I guess, if you absolutely have to. And the fire department said they did not want any house there. They didn't want a driveway off Sessions Road. They thought it was a horrible idea to put a house there. That's my 2 cents. And I want you to vote your conscience. Just do the right thing.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Staff, are there any other speakers for this item?
Any other speakers? Please go ahead and hit the raise hand button. There are no callers and no raised hands.
Okay, with that, we will go ahead and close the public comment portion and bring it back to the applicant. Mr. Bowie, you'll have 5 minutes for rebuttal. If there's anything you would like to say in response to the public comments or anything additional you would like to add.
Thank you very much. It worked.
We can see you, we can hear you.
I know, I couldn't tell at first. I'm not sure I want to be on TV anyway, but I'll go along with it. You know, to vote your conscience is an interesting plea because, you know, generally speaking, we hold as a matter of law that if one owns property, one is entitled to develop that property. And this is a valid legal lot. It could have been purchased by anybody. It happened that it was purchased by Mr. Holt. He's come up with a design that I think is a good design for the lot. It's sensitive to the surroundings. Development of this is absolutely subject to all the requirements that are imposed upon development of properties in the hillside areas of Lafayette. In other words, he's got to control his drainage, make sure everything is proper, that it doesn't impinge upon the rights of others, and that he protects others from any adverse impacts that his development might actually bring with it. In terms of Sessions Road, it's unchanged in every respect by the construction of a new home here. It's not going to make any difference to Sessions Road. It's the same Sessions Road. So I understand that the neighbors who are immediate neighbors don't like the proposed project. And that does not make them unique. I think all of you are on members of the Planning Commission. I'm sure you've seen any number of applications over a period of time, and it's hardly unusual to have the people who are the neighbors of the project that's being developed object to the project that's being developed. But, you know, and that's everyone's right, no problem. But in this instance, it's Mrs. Holt's right to see that she has an asset that she's able to turn into something that's economically viable. It's a right that's recognized as a matter of constitutional law. It's a right that's recognized as a matter of the law as well. It's also something which has been very carefully evaluated by this city in past occasions and has already acted with respect to it, and has found this particular project to be one that can indeed be actually supported and approved. And nothing's changed at all. I would think under those circumstances that this understanding that there are people who are going to be unhappy with the project. Nonetheless, I think it's certainly the fair, just, and right thing to do is to do what's already happened, to do what the city's already done in the past, and to go ahead and vote to approve this. And I would mention once again that Mrs. Holt missed an administrative automatic extension of 1 year by a matter of a few days for very understandable reasons. And this wouldn't even be facing you. So it is a new application. It is de novo, but it's de novo in the sense that technically it is, not that any of the circumstances, law, or conditions have changed. So I really, in all honesty, don't feel that you have much choice other than to approve it. But I frankly think you can feel good about approving it because I think it will be an addition to the community and there's not a negative impact that won't be fully mitigated and addressed. So I appreciate your attention this evening. Would ask you to go ahead and approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowing. I guess just one more opportunity. Are there any questions from the Planning Commission for the applicant? Okay, thank you. We will bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. If there are any initial thoughts, anyone would like to start with? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So my initial thoughts are the same as my final thoughts. We wouldn't be here if Mrs. Holt had met the administrative deadline to extend this for a year. Nothing that I've seen tonight or heard has changed how I would vote on this. And we already heard this 4 times in a hearing. We meticulously review this. We shaved off corners of houses. We shifted the house. We made it smaller. We adjusted all kinds of things. And it was appealed to the city council. The city council approved it. And then DRC had 4 additional hearings to make it even better. So I'll just leave it at that. And I'm willing to make a motion once other people have weighed in.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other thoughts? Commissioner Parson?
So I will just say ditto to what Commissioner Heising just said and add a couple of additional things. I understand the neighbors not being happy that a house is going on a vacant lot that's been vacant for a long time. I get that. We're not ignoring that. But just to be frank, a matter of conscience versus what we're legally required to do is not somewhere I'm going to be stuck. We have to follow the law. And that's why I asked the questions initially, if there were any changes from the city attorney about this lot or anything else that's changed. And the answer is no. And again, not to repeat it, but there have been 9 different hearings before 3 bodies, including the elected body of the city, that's approved this. So it's the same findings that I made the last time, the same here, and I'll approve it. And I also want to address one other issue that came up in a couple of the letters about the conflict of interest. I think it's very important here. For me, I'm speaking for myself here. I wouldn't know Mr. may he rest in peace. I wouldn't have known Mr. Holt if he was in my house unless he introduced himself to me before this application came in. I didn't know him. I actually didn't know his history before that application came in. So with respect to me personally, zero benefit to his years of service on the planning commission before. I didn't know him, nothing whatsoever. Also want to address another point about the 2018 conflict of interest issues. One of the reasons I actually applied to be on the planning commission was specifically because of that issue, because I had issues with the appearance of conflicts. I don't have any conflict whatsoever with Mr. Holt, didn't know him, his family, or the prior owners of the property. So I want to make that clear for the record. And with that, I'm ready to move forward once there's a motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farsan. Any other thoughts? Okay, we'll go Commissioner Sturm. And then also Commissioner Mason, were you putting your hand up? No, okay. Commissioner Sturm and then Vice Chair Labange.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So as everyone probably remembers or read, I voted no on this project at its prior approval. And I just wanted to very quickly summarize my current thoughts. My take is this, that the previous development of the parcel was done in a way that did not provide for the future development of a single family home, let alone one that would comply with many of the city's regulations and residential design guidelines. So I don't understand exactly why this happened, but to me, it seems like the lot sort of fell through this loophole between complexities and maybe, I don't know, some of the public comment mentioned the county, and I'm not sure how all that works, but to me, it feels like it fell through a loophole. It's still considered to be a legal lot of record, even though it was developed in a way that, like I said, doesn't allow for a single family home to be built that's compliant with our regulations. So anyway, since it is a legal lot of record, I think I said this back at the previous hearings. The only development I would feel comfortable with approving would have been a tiny house on piers that didn't disturb the drainage swale, the topography, the riparian zone vegetation, or have any privacy impact on the neighbors and any safety impacts on both roads. So I went back through the findings and I continue not to be able to make at least 9 of the required findings. So while I in general support the reapproval of projects that are unchanged and that continue to be in compliance with applicable regulations, because I find this project not to be in compliance and I voted no previously, I feel the most consistent thing for me to do would be to vote no again. So that's what I'll be voting.
Thank you, Commissioner Sturm. And I do appreciate you outlining your thought process. That's helpful to hear. Thank you. Before we get to Vice Chair Labange, I do want to jump to Commissioner Mason. I saw you put your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I pretty much ditto with Commissioner Sturm. If this was not a de novo hearing, I might have gone otherwise just to, honor the wishes of what we did previously. But since this is a de novo hearing, and I can see just a whole lot of problems being created by this construction, a house of this size, I would not be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mason. Vice Chair Labange.
I voted for this before. I see no reason to change my vote, and I'm not. I did appreciate some of the comments that Commissioner Farsan had mentioned about conflict of interest. It's hard to read some of those letters sometimes because I think we're all here in earnest trying to do the right thing. I hate to sit here and have to defend, my own position, but I didn't have any connection with Mr. Holtz. I was very similar to what Commissioner Farsan said about his knowledge of what he had done. And when I became a planning commissioner, kind of learning that through our initial review of this project. The other thing I brought up early on in my planning commission learning curve maybe my second meeting, I think I brought up the notion about someone developing for profit. I have a development background and
Excuse me.
bless you.
Sorry about that.
Now you're telling me to shut up. I learned through some feedback from staff and others, that we have to look, and so this is me resharing for the community at large. It doesn't matter who is developing or who is the applicant, whether they've lived in Lafayette their entire life or they're here just to make a buck. It doesn't matter. We're following the rules and the law as we see it, and we vote on it. That's why we have a commission. So irrespective of what someone did in the past or whether they're making money, doesn't matter. That's the gist of mine. I'm ready to move forward on this as soon as we've heard everyone out.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'll add, I also voted in favor of the project previously. I appreciate what Commissioner Heisey and Commissioner Farsan have already shared. And I do agree with you, Commissioner or Vice Chair Labange. When you read a public comment questioning your integrity and questioning, your conflict of interest, we're all here as volunteers. We're all here because we care about the city. We're all here to do our best. And I personally can make the findings. I do appreciate that every time we've heard this item in the past, the applicant made tweaks that were in direct response to the requests that the commission made. As Commissioner Heising said, after we saw it, it did get appealed to City Council. City Council voted the same way that Planning Commission did, and it went to design review. So I do know it's frustrating to see a lot adjacent to your house that's potentially developed when you're not used to seeing it developed, and we see this all the time. It's frustrating as a property owner next door. But as a planning commissioner, I can make the findings, and I would welcome any other comments from commissioners or a motion. Commissioner Heising.
Yeah, just a quick comment before I'd like to make a motion. Chair, you just said that after previous hearings, the applicant made tweets, or do you mean the?
Oh, sorry. I meant when we saw the items multiple times in 2020, when we saw this item.
And
Sorry,
those tweets came from the applicant or from just commenters in the community?
In response to things that the planning commission had requested, in response to like the neighbors to try to increase privacy,
Got it. Okay.
that sort of thing. Sorry, that's what I meant. No changes from then to today in previous hearings in 2020.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And with that,
Well,
I'll move-
sorry, before you make a motion, sorry, because you were looking the other way, I just saw Commissioner Sturm raise her hand, so I'd like to please, before your motion, Commissioner Sturm.
I just wanted to make one last comment. I feel very strongly about this project, but I know I'm in the minority, and that's totally fine. I just wanted to say that hearing the neighbors' comments, the way that I think, like the other sort of like a step back and look at this project objectively approach would be that I think what I'm hearing from the neighbors is that the commission's approach to this project doesn't feel consistent to the approaches on other projects. So, I mean, I've been on the commission now, most of us have been on here for several years now. And if you think back to other projects, I can't think of a single one that's been so constricted. And we had these issues come up all the time about drainage, safety, privacy, like tree removal. And on every other project that I can think of, the applicants made tweaks and we've achieved our goals. But on this project, yes, the applicant made tweaks, but it was impossible for them to ever achieve their goals. I mean, even in their drawing set, the perspective view from the neighbors, I mean, that house is right there towering over it, and all those redwood trees are gone. So, and, you know, the neighbor is talking about drainage issues and stuff, and I mean, it's terrible. These are things that he's gonna have to deal with, and we're just saying sorry. And I can't think of a single other project where we haven't worked with the applicant. It's either been denied or we've worked with the applicant in order to make tweaks that actually solve all of these problems. So that's what I'm hearing from them, is they're saying, like, you know, we've given this, and I agree that we've given this project special allowances because we're allowing them to build a house of 2,200 square feet on a lot that doesn't allow for a compliant residence. So anyway, I know everyone was sort of, I could tell everyone was miffed by some of the insinuations of conflict of interest, and I'm glad everyone was able to respond to that, but I wanted to sort of highlight some of the other, like the other sentiments that have been reoccurring and consistent in their comments, because I get the feeling that maybe those weren't received in the way that they were intended. And not to, you know, I don't mean to be, anyway, that's or rather that's the way that I understand them, and I wanted to share that.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little caught off guard of what we're inconsistent about. So I would, if there is a particular comment, Commissioner Sherm, I'd like, hopefully you can share that one, but
No, I'm sorry. I was explaining, what I meant to do is explain the way that I am understand the neighbor's comments, and I haven't heard that understanding reflected in the other commissioners' comments, so I wanted to share that interpretation on my part. There, so that was
okay. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. Commissioner Farson? If you wouldn't mind unmuting, Commissioner.
I apologize. I don't want to take up any more time. Thank you, Chair. So, I mean, I would have to say, just for the record, respectfully, to say that we've ignored the neighbors, I think is not a fair representation of what's happened here. We've had 4 meetings at the Planning Commission about a single house on a single property. It went to the City Council. There were 4 meetings after that. Again, I'm repeating the record with the Design Review Commission. I don't know of another instance since I have been on the Planning Commission where there have been 9 meetings for a single house. Now, there have been for, you know, multi-family residences, we've had more, but I also don't recall an instance where we have not approved a house at the end of the day for a property after giving tweaks along the way. And sometimes we got to a point of saying, there isn't much more we can have you do to make all of the neighbors happy. I completely understand the frustration of the neighbors with it, but we have a legal obligation, and that's where I'm coming from. I understand their feelings about this property going there in that location. I get it, but that's why I asked the question. Is the opinion that this is a legal lot? And the answer is yes. They have a right to build there, and we work very hard to try to get that house in the best place it could be. And frankly, everyone at the end of the day, I'm saying as a whole, not every person agreed. The City Council did, Planning Commission, and DRC then worked on, you know, working through other issues that way. I just want to, we're not ignoring the neighbors. We listened to them the entire way, and now nothing has changed from before. I just want to get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I bring it back to you, Commissioner Sherm, I do think we can probably within the commission go back and forth many times. But Commissioner Farson, just to clarify something you said, when you said we have a legal obligation, are you saying that a legal lot of record has the right to potentially be developed if we can make the findings for the proposed project? Or are you saying we legally need to approve any project?
No, thank you for that. We made the findings at the end of the day with the tweaks, so they have a right to build that because they have met our requirements
Thank you for
on
clarifying.
a legal lot.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sturm, I saw you put your hand back up.
Well, I don't want to belabor, I mean, I know how the vote's gonna go, so I don't want to belabor it. I guess, one last comment is just well, maybe I'll just leave it. And I wasn't intending to say that the commission was ignoring the neighbors. I guess what I was just saying is that this legal lot of record issue and the way the lot was developed previously, which didn't allow for compliant development of a single family residence, I think it put the commission and the council in a pickle. And so I think it was, I just can't imagine some of the aspects of this project. If you look at them separately, like those wouldn't, I can't think of an example of those being approved on another project. That every other project that I've seen is not constricted to this level. So we would have asked them to move the house to the center of the lot and not cut out the redwood trees and maintain the drainage zone, things like that. So I just, that's what's frustrating to me is I think that we haven't solved all the issues and it's not compliant, and it's just, it feels like a lot of special privileges for this lot, and I'm not sure why. I still don't understand why that is the case or why that's being supported. But
Thank you, Commissioner Sturm. This lot does remind me of one we saw off of Moraga Road. I don't remember the name of the street. It was maybe 3 years ago. And it was, Commissioner, or sorry, not Commissioner, Mr. Wolf.
I believe you're probably referring to a highly constrained lot on Tanglewood Drive. Or Tanglewood Lane, yeah.
Yeah. In my opinion, very similar. Okay, did I see another hand that was trying to go up, or was it you, Commissioner Heising? I think it was probably you.
Yeah, it was me. My hand was up to comment, but others made the points I was going to make.
Okay, thank you. Any other items, any other points of discussion on this item? If not, I would welcome a motion.
I'll move that we adopt resolution 2022-15, finding the project exempt from CEQA and reapproving the project subject to conditions.
Thank you. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. So a motion by Commissioner Heising and a second by Vice Chair Labange. We will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Farsan,
Aye.
Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Nay.
Commissioner Sturm,
Nay.
Vice Chair Labange,
Aye.
and Chair Radnich. I'm an aye. So the item is 4-2. I will ask staff on a reapproval, is there an opportunity for appeal, or is a reapproval a reapproval?
Any decision that the planning commission makes can be appealed. So yes, there is a 14-day appeal period.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Okay. So we will close item 6A. Let me pull back up my agenda here. Item 7A, new public hearing. This is item HDP 31-22, James and Canterbury, R40 zoning. So this is a request for hillside development permit, grading permit, tree permit, to build a 2,522 square foot single story home. And Nancy, welcome. It looks like we'll have a presentation by staff. So tonight, our charge is to review the proposed project, conduct a public hearing, and if it, seems appropriate, adopt resolution deeming the project exempt from CEQA and approving the project subject to standard conditions. So welcome, Nancy.
Waiting for Greg to enable screen share.
Is it, I'm seeing that it is enabled. Is it, are you not able to?
I'm not.
Okay, okay. Toggle off and back on. Hopefully that works. Great.
Giving Planning Commission, the item before you is HTP 3122, which is the Hillside Development Phase 1 permit for a vacant unaddressed parcel on Mountain Springs Road on the north side of the city. The subject 1.4 acre lot is zone R40 within the Hillside Overlay District and wholly within the 250-foot Class 2 ridgeline setback, since the Class 2 ridgeline bisects the property here. In addition to phase 1, the project will also require approvals for design review, grading permit, and tree permit. As you can see from the survey, the lot, you enter or you get to the lot by going through Belize to Toyon and then up to Mountain Springs Road, which is a narrow private easement. On the lower end, it steeply slopes and it upslopes north, and then the ridgeline is here and then steeply slopes down on the other side of the ridgeline. The project proposes to construct an approximately 2,500 square foot one-story home along Mountain Springs Road. This is the road here. It's actually on the property, goes through a few properties, driveway goes down, and it proposes towards the north side of the property. This is the area where it's less steep on the property. Below is a north side section of the property. On this side is Mountain Springs Road, the ridge line, and then the slope going down. The proposed structure is approximately 35.5 feet away. Here are renderings of the rear of the property, looking towards the ridge line, the front of the property from Mountain Springs Road, and elevations of each side. This is the north side and this is the south side. Staff received no public comment on the project. I realize I missed including this in the staff packet, but this is the material and color material board proposed for the project. Staff recommends Planning Commission review the project, conduct a public hearing, find the project exempt from CEQA, and adopt Resolution 2022 approving the project subject to standard conditions. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Nancy. Are there any questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant here tonight?
I
Welcome
will
them.
promote Tara Rios, Mr. Canterbury, and Ms. James.
Okay.
Looks like
Welcome.
folks are on their way in.
Okay.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. We can see you and hear you. And Tara, we can see you and hear you. Welcome.
Good evening.
Your team will have 10 minutes for a presentation.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate the project that we're proposing is a modestly sized single-story home. Relative to the lot, the residents will only occupy 7% of the lot. Based on the photos and the sites sections that Ms. Tran just shared with you, the proposed location of the residence has been very thoughtfully positioned to have minimal impacts on the visual character of the site. Additionally, we believe the residence will be concealed due to the distance from the neighboring homes, as well as the topography and ample vegetation, both existing and new. Within the site and around the structure, we feel that the overall design would fit well into the community, including the colors and the materials that we've provided as well in the renderings that you've seen. And we do feel like we've done all we can do to comply with the city standards, and we're very pleased with the staff report. And we appreciate your time this evening, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant's team? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tara. My question is, well, first a comment. I did drive up to the site and take a look at it. Happy that the story poles were already there, even though staff report said they were going to be done with phase 2, but it was great that they were there for phase 1. And my question is, it has to do with the cut fill on the site and the narrow private drive up there, because I know probably yourself as well as the neighbors are going to want to see as little truck traffic up and down that road as possible, just because it's very narrow and you don't want to beat up the private road any more than you have to with big trucks carrying rock. But it shows that it's balanced. It shows that it's balanced with 250 yards of cut and 250 yards of fill, but then there's also a 55 yards of import. Is that select material for that gravel driveway? Because I see that you're just putting in a gravel driveway and not paving it. Is that what the 55 yards is?
Yes, that's correct. And we are positioning the driveway. It has been designed in a way that it runs parallel to the existing contours so that the grading does not have to be, it minimizes the grading in that area.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was getting at, because when you look at page 3 of the staff report, it shows where the original grade is and then the new grade, it shows a little bit higher. And I was just, you know, it's good that you balance the site, for not hauling stuff in and out, rock in and out. But I was just trying to see if there's a way to make it a little bit lower, but it's great. It's 1 story. I think it fits well with the lot, and it's not obtrusive at all. It's actually a really nice design. So that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Heising. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. We will at this point open it up for public comment, and then we'll bring it back to the applicant team for a chance for any additional information or to clarify anything said during the public comment period.
If you would like to make a public comment, please go ahead and raise your hand now. Seeing none.
Okay. Now would be an opportunity for the applicant's team. If there's anything you would like to say, we did not receive any public comments, so there's nothing to provide rebuttal for, but if there's any additional information you would like to share, please feel free.
Yes, Wayne Canterbury, this is Liz James.
Hi.
I don't think we have to address anything on the merits of the application unless you do have questions, and we're prepared to answer any questions you have along those lines. But we would like to inform you that we found that the staff has been professional, courteous, helpful, and given the volume of our calls and and communications, very patient with us. So you have great staff, and just wanted to thank them.
Yeah, we really appreciate all the effort on your behalf for our project. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And I will agree, our staff is great. Okay, so we will close public comment portion. Thank you for your additional comments, and we'll bring it to the commission for discussion. Any initial thoughts? So just going back to the agenda for a second. So tonight, we're looking potentially to adopt the resolution subject to standard conditions. Anyone like to start with thoughts? And this is for the siding and the massing. If in case that wasn't clear, but it is. Commissioner Mason.
Thank you. I am perfectly fine with this. I'd like to commend the applicant. It'd be nice if far more of our projects went through this smoothly, with everybody prepared, with the applicant reaching out to staff to clarify everything. I do not know whether they reached out to the neighbors, but the fact that nobody came and spoke out against the project is a very strong endorsement in my mind, and I think it is suitably sized for the project, for the site, which is also a rarity. So I am fully comfortable with this project.
Thank you. I will add, if the applicants can hear us, to me, this is a great house. I appreciate that it's not overkill in size. And as a commissioner, I don't think I've ever, if we see an application that's proposed downtown, right, we can drive by and see it. But if anyone ever builds this house and has a housewarming party, feel free to extend an invitation, because I'd love to see what this actually looks like after it's constructed. Just throwing that out there. If it is approved tonight. Are there any other comments or discussion items that the commissioners would like to bring up? Commissioner Heisen?
Yeah, just two quick comments relative to the positioning of the house and the massing. Just citing from the staff report, I mean, this is a 2,490 square foot house, and the others in the neighborhood range from 17 to 3,600. So again, echoing what the chair just said, that this it's pleasant. It's a nice surprise when someone's not coming in overkill trying to put too big of a house on the lot, and it's very appropriate, this size house. So massing wise, totally on board with it. And also location wise, it's in the flat. If you look at the topography on sheet C2, it's in the flattest part of the lot. You could put it in just by looking at the grades and the topography. So I'm fully supportive of this as we have it before us.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or emotion?
I'll make a motion. Hold on, getting to the recommendation here. I make a motion that we approve resolution 22-18 of this project subject to standard conditions.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Heising. Second by Vice Chair Lawange. We will move to roll call vote. Commissioner Parson,
Aye.
Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Sturm,
Aye.
Vice Chair Labange,
Aye.
Chair Radnich, I'm an aye. So the item passes. Thank you. Thank you applicants team for attending.
And there's a 14-day appeal.
Oh,
period.
yes, thank you. Thank you. 14-day appeal period. Okay, item 8. Other business. A, B, and C. So election of chair and vice chair for 2023, Planning Commission representative for GPAC, and ARC volunteer. I would like to suggest that we kind of take items 8A and B together as discussion. They will be separate votes, but I would hope that we can kind of discuss the two together. And I would like to maybe just start by saying a couple things. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Mason, is your hand is up before I start.
Yeah, thank you. Anna knows because I brought her in to the loop, but I won't be able to take on any extra responsibilities in the near term. My wife is in the ICU at John Muir, fully sedated and on a breathing tube, has been for the past 32 days. If anybody wants any more individual information, they can reach out. I also want to make sure that Anna's had a lot on her plate, and I want to make sure that she nor anybody else suffers burnout. We operate very well with an even number, which is extremely odd for any panel. And I do want to make certain, we spread the load around, and apologize that I can't take more. I'm trying to keep my life as consistent as possible and, not make any changes, but, I will have to pass on more here. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Mason, I appreciate your comments. And I could see some faces in reaction to your news. So I will just extend from the commission that our positive thoughts are with you and your family and your wife. And I think everyone will agree that it's not appropriate right now to request anything additional. We appreciate that you're here tonight, and just really just wish you and your family a lot of positive thoughts. And it's going to make me tear
Thank you.
up. So, yeah. So that's actually kind of, I appreciate the start to the conversation. I was going to say, I appreciate all of the time that everyone on Planning Commission puts in, right? We all clearly have personal lives. We all have successful careers. We all have families, and we all have commitments to our community above and beyond Planning Commission. If we're mentors, coaches, whatever else we're doing. So along the lines of what Commissioner Mason was saying, I know we're all busy, and I would just like to respect the fact that, or ask that we all respect one another's, and, just have the understanding that we are all busy, right? I personally will offer, if Commissioner Mason is up for rotation, and the only option is for me to take on a role that he would be required or, up for next. If that's the only option, happy to do it as a fellow commissioner. But I also am hoping that we can rotate a bit. So that's why I want to talk about both GPAC and Planning Commission together. I know, last year around this time, so I've served on GPAC for 2 years, and when we had this discussion last year about rotating, we did say that it kind of made sense for, excuse me, in work, I do CEQA and planning, right? And so I have a knowledge that I can bring to the housing element. The housing element is basically wrapped up. I know we've talked in the past last year, that same GPAC conversation that, for example, Commissioner Heising would be a great fit for the transportation element, given his professional background. We are currently starting the safety element, so something to think about. I know there's commissioners maybe who have expressed concern for safety, in the city in the past. I also know, I'll just share, and then I do see your hand up, Commissioner Farzan. For me, as when I was vice chair is when I started on GPAC, and I did actually find it very helpful to hear what was going on in those detailed meetings, to then also be able to bring it to the Planning Commission. I don't know, I've kind of lost my train of thought, but I'm just open it for discussion. Like I said, I know we all have a lot going on. So I'm interested in people's takes. Does it make sense to rotate? Does it make sense for what? Commissioner Farzan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Greg, honestly, best wishes. And if you need anything, please let me know. Honestly, to be completely frank, I'm just taken aback. So anything you need, please let me know. See what I can do to help with that. Going to the topic, under the rules, and I don't know them in front of me, so even with the chair and the vice chair, I know the GPAC, we're talking about it together. Is it required that somebody has to be the chair for the full year? Can it be 6 months, whatever? I'm just trying to figure out under the rules, is that allowable where somebody could go 6 months and then another person would do the extra 6 months?
To my knowledge, there are no rules regarding chair and vice chair. It is by custom, essentially.
Yeah.
So I think anything is fair game. Traditionally, a new chair and vice chair are elected for the coming year. They serve 1-year terms, but circumstances often present and changes need to be made mid-course. And it's not uncommon on PC or other commissions, committees, or task force to maintain the same chair for more than 1 year. So really anything that the group comes to as a decision, provided that we have a chair and ideally a vice chair as well, separate from the GPAC, that would be satisfactory.
Thank you. That helps. So I was, and Ann and I also spoke separately because she talked to everybody about their interest in this. And I'll be honest, I'll tell you guys the same thing I told Anna. Or the chair, I apologize for getting a little too informal. I'm insanely busy like the rest of you with life and work, especially because travel has started again. That's kind of my biggest issue is that. Having said all that, I also don't want to burden the chair to do 2 roles again for the upcoming year. That's why I was asking. I'm open if no one else wants to step forward because of everything we've got going on. I'm open to potentially doing something for a period of time and then figuring out as we go ahead. That's why I asked the question, but I'm just opening up the door there. But I want to be honest, if somehow I'm in the chairish land, definitely needs to be a vice chair because there could be times where I'm traveling, where there's nothing I can really do from where I am. So that's my opening.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the honesty. I also would just like to remind the commission that Commissioner Farzan was chair before me, so he was chair last year. Again, doesn't mean that we can't, reappoint someone, but I think this would be an appropriate time to reach out Vice Chair Lavange. Don't want to put you on the spot, but kind of need to. Is moving up to chair something you're interested in, or is it something that it would be less than ideal for you at this time?
I'm definitely interested. Timing is a little tough. And that's a little, so I'd honestly say, if I talk to you in 2 weeks, it could be a different answer. But right now, timing is a little tough. And I don't want to be vague, but that's the best I can give right now. So if there's any way we can parlay this to maybe early January, I'll have more clarity to provide. But I also feel like you've got way too much and you've carried the water too much, and everyone has carried the water in this group. So I probably need to carry more. Where's that 7th person we're going to get? Let's get them carrying some water. So I don't know if we can, delay this to our next meeting and you and I talk a little more offline. But if so, I'd ask to do that.
I mean, I guess if we need to, I'd prefer not to. The reason being that I don't know if we're going to have another meeting in December, and then also the safety element is starting. There's actually a meeting, I want to say the 13th, next Tuesday. So if possible, but let's please keep that in mind if we, do end up needing to delay the decision.
Does this have to happen can a decision be discussed offline and kind of filtered back to the planning, or are there Brown Act issues with discussions on this?
If Commissioner, if Vice Chair Labange, you and the chair discuss it, that's fine. That's not a violation. It should be brought back to the commission as an agenda item for discussion. But I think, with Chair Radnich, you noted the upcoming safety element meetings, and perhaps you articulated that, consideration of GPAC representation and chair, vice chair, they're all responsibilities to some degree, to varying degrees rather. And so one option could be to have an appointee or a volunteer to be that representative of the PC for the safety element, and then eventually defer the decision on chair, vice chair to December or January. But you noted the time sensitivity, if you will, of the GPAC and safety element.
Yeah, thank you. And then just to clarify before we go to Commissioner Heising, your comment, Commissioner Farson, yes, I did reach out, just for the record, I did reach out to commissioners to kind of just query interest. There was not, back and forth discussion, and then there was not back and forth discussion that was shared. So just for the record, Commissioner Heising. Oh, and then Commissioner Mason after.
Yeah, I just like to offer some clarity based on what the chair said earlier, as far as what we had talked about in the past and my willingness to jump in. Regarding GPAC, I'm fully accepting of working on the transportation element, and timing wise, my understanding is the safety element is in 23, transportation is in 24, and I'd be happy to be vice chair in 24, and then that would dovetail in with my GPAC assignment with the transportation element. Going back to what you were saying, Chair, that you found that helpful to be vice chair and be on the GPAC at the same time. So if that helps in the discussion, I can commit to that now. And I'm planning to be around. I'm not bailing out of the commission.
Okay, thank you for that. Commissioner Mason, so you had your hand up.
Yeah, if there was somebody that would be willing to split the safety element with me, I could take half. It's just that there's going to be, like I had told Anna early today, I wouldn't be on, but got back from the hospital and signed on. So I just need to know that there's somebody that can cover it, because there will be times when either I can't be there or my mind just is shot.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. I will just share my own personal experience on the housing element, which I do think was a little different. We met a lot. It's helpful to be the one who's consistently attending. I know, so not saying that we can't split it, but just the benefit of, knowing the pieces of information. I do know there's roughly one meeting a month for the safety element. It'll, I assume, continue, Greg, with what we had before, right? The third Tuesday of the month. Generally, there will be a couple in-person community meetings, opportunities for the public to provide comment. So yeah, something we can consider, which is, splitting it, or just from my experience, it was helpful having one person attend regularly. I will also say, just again, from my experience, attending meetings for planning commission is time consuming, right? Like, we all read packets, we all read public comments come in even, 2 hours before a meeting. We all go to visit sites. Personally, hosting a meeting as vice chair or chair, in my perspective only, is it's a marginal increase in responsibility for me. If it turns out, maybe a suggestion, or just, throwing it out there, hearing what you said, Commissioner Heising, about interest in 2024 as vice chair, one option could be, I, potentially could remain chair for another year. Vice Chair Labange could remain vice chair for another year. If someone's willing to do the safety element in 2023, and then potentially after that, Vice Chair Labange would be ready to move up to chair in 2024. Commissioner Heising, you could potentially come in as vice chair with the transportation element. I do realize that's laying out a lot of stuff, subject to change, just kind of thought I was having, throwing it out there.
How about, and I appreciate that, Chair. I think I'll be in a position to take the chair, assuming no one has a dramatic change of heart and is dying to. And I have had the benefit of one time this year doing it. You were remarkably present. But I got the one time, so I do agree with you. I just need a couple weeks. So if there's any way, since there's nothing magical about the end of the year, or us bleeding in a meeting or two, I would ask if we could, because I don't want anyone else to get, I could probably do it.
Okay.
But I can't commit tonight.
Yeah, or maybe we can pick a date to start it. I do appreciate that for the conversation. It does lead me, though, in my mind, of I'm not hearing strong interest for 2023 for a vice chair. I do know a couple individuals have offered, if we're, needing one and kind of in a desperate situation, nor have I heard interest for a GPAC representative. And just going to be honest, I did it 2 years in a row, and I think someone else can do it now. If it's going to come down to me being on GPAC again, or chair or vice chair, I would please respectfully ask that I be on vice chair or chair and someone else take a turn. I do appreciate that everyone's saying, like, I've been pulling a lot of weight. We all have, right? I know Christina has worked on the downtown objective standards. I know, Gary, you've done CPAC, or you are still doing CPAC, sorry, Commissioner Heising. And I want to say Vice Chair Labange, you were doing something also with the overlay Park Theater area, something. So I know we are all taking turns. Just throwing that out there, Commissioner Mason.
Yeah, why don't you just put me down for GPAC? I actually would rather do that than be vice chair or chair. I mean, you've done an intimidatingly good job, and I would not want to follow you. And, you know, once a month, you know, there may be odd health issues, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
I do appreciate that. I don't want to talk you out of it. I will ask though, is there any other interest in the safety element? Commissioner Sturm, I see your hand up, and Commissioner Farsan.
Can you remind us of the schedule? Is it once or twice a month?
It's Ray, if you wouldn't mind chiming in, the schedule, I can pull up the one we had.
Yeah, and just for the benefit of the full commission, the biggest lift by far was the housing element with respect to GPAC. That is probably 5 times as big as any other component. And so just by the nature of it, the state laws have exploded around it, mushroomed, as well as, you know, the depth and breadth and granularity with which we undertake it in Lafayette. The safety element is a different animal entirely. It is largely kind of prescribed or pro forma how cities can and should go about it in terms of analyses. Certainly, we can always go deeper. You know, we could write hundreds and hundreds of pages on seismicity and geologic stability and seismic risk and wildfire, et cetera. But to the degree that those tomes and volumes of studies actually inform policy decisions and actions by the city, I don't believe that all that work is necessary. So it's pretty clear that the community is vulnerable to seismic activity and wildfire. And so then it becomes a question of what programs and actions the city identifies and undertakes. So with that, there is a consultant, Placeworks, working on the safety element. So the safety element lift, we expect to be 1 meeting per month, and basically reviewing those materials that were prepared by Placeworks and giving guidance from the body.
Great. Can I just follow up before we go to more discussion on this? So I know in the December 13th GPAC meeting, there is going to be an updated schedule for the safety element. In the last GPAC staff report from November, it generally outlined, just like you said, 1 meeting a month between now and April, with final review of the draft safety element in mid-April. So to the best of your knowledge, does that kind of mean that the safety element will be wrapped up by then, and then we'll move right to transportation? Or what does that next transition look like? And I'm only asking so that Commissioner Mason can, you know, think about timing, others can think about timing.
Righto. So yes, we expect the safety element to be wrapped up by April or May to go on to Planning Commission and Council. And then I hesitate to commit to any kind of path following that. Yes, when we initiated the general plan update, we were going to take the elements in order as described: housing, safety, transportation, circulation, followed by others. However, the vice mayor and endorsed by the full council identified that the housing element and planning to accommodate another roughly 2,500 residences in the city, you know, substantially increasing the housing in town potentially in the next 8 years. And largely located, or now exclusively located, in the downtown. The council doesn't feel that we're ready to accommodate all those people, and looking forward to how those people will be served, get around, have goods and services. And so have asked that the staff put together a scoping and RFP for updating the downtown specific plan. So the remaining elements of the general plan may be put on hold pending the downtown specific plan update, which does include those things I mentioned and the elements of the general plan, just in a more focused geography, albeit the direction also being to expand the geography of the downtown specific plan to include the BART lots and westwards to Acalanes Road, so past the De Silva property. So it would be slightly expanded geographically, but based on what the existing downtown specific plan speaks to and talks about, but updated in light of the new housing units and residents envisioned in the housing element.
Okay, and then the idea would be that there would be a planning commission GPAC liaison on that downtown plan as well.
Yeah, there certainly I think the council will want to see planning commission representation on that DSP update committee, whatever form it takes.
Yeah, so that's helpful to hear. So something for us to consider is, it does sound, if you really boil it down, right? Safety element for 6 months roughly, and then might be a good time, right? To, if we need to assign another commissioner to the GPAC after that. Commissioner Mason, your hand is up.
Yeah, go ahead and put me on for the safety. It's in my wheelhouse, and frankly, I probably welcome the diversion. Otherwise, I sit home and feel sorry for myself.
I do appreciate that. I will say though, I think it's practice to have a backup. I know we had one for housing element, or at least when I was on, it was Commissioner Maggio, who is no longer on the commission. So is there anyone, I do appreciate Commissioner Mason, you offering for GPAC. Is there anyone willing to be a backup? So backups do not attend meetings unless the main person cannot make it. Commissioner Sturm?
I volunteer to be his backup.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Mason?
And just for the record, I'm sure you thought that chocolate chip banana nut bread was just for you being nice. It worked as an excellent bribe. It was really good.
Perfect. Good to know. But he is kidding. But I do make great banana, but
And thank you, Commissioner Sturm. I hope not to avail you.
Okay, well, great. I feel like we're a third of the way there. GPAC representative for the safety element. The meeting is December 13th, so kindly mark your calendars for that day. Commissioner Sturm, are you? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I've right now I have some, I'm stretched to the point that I feel like I'm not satisfactorily set that I'm not doing a satisfactory job of meeting all of my current obligations. So that's why I'm not jumping in to volunteer for things. I'll just say, like, tentatively that I'm interested in participating in the DSP update. I really enjoy the subcommittee work, or special task force work, and I haven't done that in a while. I just I haven't wanted to take on more than I can do a good job at, but I'm open to tentatively putting me down for that role. And I was right before Commissioner Farzan, so if other people have an interest in vice chair, I'd love for somebody else to step forward, and if not, if there's no other option, then I'll do it.
Okay. Greg, well, we don't need to, like, would it be fine for GPAC representative to say tonight that we're gonna have a GPAC representative through the safety element, and then we're going to reconsider the next GPAC representative, or do we need to say tonight who that next person is going to be if it's within 2023?
No, you could say at any point in time.
Okay.
So for the safety element, I think you're in good position and don't need to commit or beyond that.
Okay. So I did have another idea, just as people were talking. And again, I just want to be respectful and appreciative of everyone's personal commitments and everyone's professional strengths that they bring to the commission. I think the city is lucky, the community is lucky, and we are lucky that we have a variety of professional backgrounds that helps us be a more rounded commission. Knowing or hearing, Commissioner Heising, how well your background would fit with the transportation element, and also your willingness to be vice chair in 24. I also hear Commissioner Labange, Vice Chair Labange, your interest in being chair in, let's just say, a month, just for sake of argument, in a month. I also respect that Commissioner Sturm and Commissioner Farzan have a lot going on. I would be happy I know it's not traditional, but I'd be happy to serve as vice chair in 23 with Commissioner Labange as chair in 23, Commissioner Mason serving the first portion of GPAC in 23, and likely Commissioner Sturm the second half of 23, which would then open us to kind of be back unofficially on track of in 24, potentially Commissioner Heising, you being vice chair and GPAC representative. I would be comfortable with that, and it wouldn't be if there's nobody else. I do respect that. Maybe I have a little more flexibility. For me, it was the housing element, and that was a lot. So, thoughts on that potential arrangement?
So you're saying that you would serve as vice chair this year, and then next year somebody else would jump in as chair, most likely?
Or I could move up to chair if there wasn't, I do like how we've done it in the past, right? Vice chair moves to chair. I think it's like a natural progression. Again, I know it wouldn't be traditional of what we've done the last couple of years. If that's what ended up happening, I'd be comfortable with it. I personally don't find chairing or vice chairing much additional effort to being on the commission. Personally, it was the GPAC weekly or bi-weekly in addition to being on planning commission. That was a lot for me personally. Commissioner Farzan?
So I'm perfectly fine with the framework that you just set up. Happy to vote for that, no problems whatsoever. But I'll put it out there again. I know you just went through both GPAC and being a chair. So if you need somebody to sit in the vice chair position next year, I'm open to it, but I'm completely happy to vote for you to be the vice chair. But again, I just really do think it's a little bit unfair for you to have to do it all. I know we just moved GPAC, but you still were just chair. And I know you're right, it isn't more, but there is more stuff you have to do as the chair. You do no matter what, because you're herding the cats here, and that takes some effort. So again, happy with your framework, but I'm also open to give you more relief if necessary. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, Vice Chair Labange.
I think it's fine and it's nice and I appreciate that you're doing that, but my point I want to make is, do we really have to have a vice chair? Because the vice chair does nothing unless the chair is not there. And it's good to have, in a perfect world, like you said, the vice chair moves up. So you want to have the next vice chair be someone who's at least thinking, oh my gosh, I better be ready in case it's time to come. You don't need that. I mean, you've been there, you've done it. So we need to have somebody at some point get into that vice chair role so they can be ready to go up. So I guess my question is, do we actually need a vice chair? Because couldn't it be at large?
I'm gonna say we need one, but I'm going to look to Mr. Wolf for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say we would need one as well, even if they're just in name only. I mean, as you indicated, you had the chair once this past year, and so vice chair doesn't get called into action much, but I think the city council would want to see a chair and vice chair for each of their commissions.
Okay, and then I guess my only point would be, you know, if and when we ever fill out the planning commission, that if you were to take that position, I would just think we with all of us, we probably already are there, that if someone wanted it, they'd say, hey, do you mind if I switch in with you? No one's at that point now. I guess I just think I see no problem with it. It just seems like we should have someone who's ready to go to the next step, which I'm not quite there for the next vice chair. So maybe it doesn't matter. If you do it, at some point we change it, you know.
Wait, are you saying you're not quite there to be chair, or
No,
were
no.
you just like
Well,
making?
no, I already addressed that, and so but just putting that aside, because I'm ready to. I've got some stuff I have to deal with, and that's the whole 2 weeks thing. So we can move on.
Yeah, so I mean, the chair position won't start till the first of the year anyways, is my understanding, right? I guess we can set it for whatever day. I was already assuming it would be in the January meetings. So Commissioner Sturm.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think everyone's being very polite, and I think we just need to not be polite and be honest. So I will just say, for me, the greater commitment was GPAC. So I very much appreciate another commissioner taking on GPAC. I'm more than happy to serve as vice chair or chair in 2023. And I'll leave it at that. Commissioner Sturm?
Oh, I was gonna say that it sounds like maybe we need a contingency plan for Vice Chair Labange, just in case his plans go the other way. So, and I think given everything that you've been doing, Commissioner Farsans, I was gonna make a joke about allowing you more time to bake banana breads. No, I want them to. But if you really feel like chair is doable, even after the effort you've already put in, maybe it makes sense to let Commissioner Farsan be vice chair and you be the contingency plan in case Vice Chair Labange can't step into the chair role. And then you get to rotate out the next year.
Yeah, I guess maybe I just look to you, Vice Chair Labange, are you looking to make a decision in 2 weeks, or are you looking at if you were to be chair, you can't commit to hosting a meeting or chairing a meeting until 2 weeks from now?
No, the first one. I can't commit right now, but I will be ready to commit a couple weeks, and that might be immediately starting. And I think that's what's going to happen. I just don't want to say that and then in 2 weeks say, look, I'm really sorry, so I can't do this. So
Okay.
that's why I wish we would just postpone this decision for a month, you know, since it doesn't really matter what day it starts.
Okay. Commissioner Heising?
So how about this idea for a backup, for a contingency plan, if Stephen can't be, if Commissioner Vice Chair Labange cannot be chair, I'll be chair, Anna, you be vice chair. But if Stephen's plan works, he's chair, you're vice chair. Does that work for people? And then Greg and Christina are the GPAC.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I just then, when you're doing the transportation element.
Well,
which
then I've already
so
done
we-
my,
Yeah.
I've
you-
already done my chairship and
then
I'll just
someone
be,
else. Yeah.
because we, like, at this point, we've all been chair outside of Stephen and Greg. Like any one of us can jump back in and be chair. We don't have
Yeah.
to do the vice chair first and then the chair.
Yeah, agreed.
So can we vote on that? And then can we have like a double vote, Greg, where like we vote on Stephen being the chair and Anna being the vice chair? And if that blows up, the backup plan is on chair and Anna's vice chair. Can we vote on that now tonight? And then we don't have to talk about it at the next meeting in December, if we even have a next meeting in December?
Yes, you can vote on that and do so in one motion.
Okay.
Does
Good
that
idea.
sound good to everybody?
Yeah.
I'm good with
So
that.
do you need a motion? Do we have to make this all official or?
We do need to make it official, and let me just go back to the agenda. They're separate items. So 8A is election of chair and vice chair, and then 8B is planning commission representative to GPAC. So can we have just the separate motions?
Okay, I'll do a motion. I make a motion that Vice Chair Labange will be chair next year. And Chair Radnich will be vice chair, basically flip-flop. The backup plan to that is I'll be chair and the chair will be vice chair. Anna will be vice chair. That makes sense.
Yes.
Yep.
It
Okay.
does make sense, yes. Thank you. So we have a motion,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Labange. And we will move to a roll call vote. Commissioner Farson,
Aye.
Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Sturm,
Aye.
Vice Chair Labange,
Aye.
Chair Radnich, I'm an aye. So the item passes. Thank you. And Vice Chair Labange, we will, I guess I'll just look to you to update staff and in the next couple of weeks, whenever it ends up being. I guess, Greg, well, when do we need to set a date of when this goes into effect, or is it just assumed January?
Really, it's at the discretion of the commission. At this point, I might recommend the second meeting in January as the new chair taking
Perfect. Okay.
the apple. So
Okay.
the first meeting in January, we anticipate January 3rd. So the packet of materials would go out before the holidays. You'd have some nice reading material with your eggnog. And then the first Tuesday of January on the 3rd, Monday being an observed holiday, I think.
Okay. And then that means the second meeting in January would be around the 16th, which might also be a holiday. So it might be the 16th or 17th. I might be off on my months of which holidays are
I think it's the
when.
18th.
Okay, well, so the one in the teens in that third week is when we will.
Yep.
Okay,
And we could just say
Helpful.
second meeting in January.
yeah, second meeting in January. Helpful, thank you.
16th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. for that discussion and for that, those volunteering for those positions. Item 8B, GPAC representative for the safety element. Is there any motion? Is there a motion?
I'll go for it. I'll move that we nominate Commissioner Mason to be the GPAC safety element liaison, and Commissioner Sturm to be the alternate.
Starting December 13th meeting.
Correct. And we don't have to do the downtown specific plan now. So we're just, okay, that's my motion.
Okay, motion from Commissioner Heising. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner
I'll defer.
Sturm for the second. Okay, roll call vote. Commissioner Farsan,
I may vote against it now. I'm kidding. Aye.
Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
That was really good banana bread, so aye.
Commissioner Sturm,
Aye.
Vice Chair Launch,
Aye.
and Chair Radnich. I'm an aye. Again, thank you to commissioners who volunteered. Item 8C, ARC volunteer for December 16th.
Is it the same time at 9:30?
Yes, 9:30 virtual.
I can volunteer for the 16th.
Great, thank you. So Commissioner Farsan. Okay, anything else on this before we move to item 9, commissioners' reports? No, okay. GPAC, commissioner report update there is that we're moving forward with the safety element. There will be kind of like the housing element, there will be opportunities for public input, some surveys, some in-person workshops in the first quarter of 2023. And again, the next meeting is on, due to the holiday schedule, it's a little different. So it's December 13th. So thank you for that. So that's my update for GPAC. Are there any other commissioner updates? No. Okay, item 10, planning director's report.
The city council met on the housing element last Monday evening, and there's been extensive public comment around concern regarding evacuation times and wildfire risk, and comments regarding inadequacy of the environmental impact report. There is, guidance under CEQA and Appendix G and case law that speaks to whether the city would be impeded from implementing its evacuation plan. And simply that additional time to evacuate does not necessarily in and of itself constitute a significant impact. And thus the EIR found, and the Planning Commission recognized this during its review, the less than significant conclusion for those topics. So that was discussed by the council at the last 2 meetings as well. I think the most notable thing that the Planning Commission directed was, so on October 10th, the Attorney General's office issued guidance on wildfire and evacuation analyses. And it was heartening to see that the predominance of the guidance and kind of best practices around that, the city had already undertaken of its own accord. One example would be, don't assume that evacuation zones can be phased and one after the other. It might be the case that everyone has to get out at once. That's what the city assumed in its analyses. So things like that, not putting low density residential out into wildland, urban interface areas or high fire hazard areas, but rather increasing density, locating new density near evacuation routes, et cetera. So it was heartening to see the alignment between what the AG's guidance was and the city's actions to date. So with that, the council did not direct additional analyses to be done or to the conclusions to be changed. With respect to the programs, there were additional programs that were added to the housing element to respond to HCD comments, and more concrete commitments and timeframes is what HCD wanted to see, as well as, you know, estimates and projections as to how effective each program would be, kind of numerically, empirically. And then lastly, the housing element opportunity sites, the GPAC, Planning Commission and Council all supported, preferred the inclusion of the BART parking lots as an opportunity site. I think, you know, HCD, well, I think they are clearly opportunity sites. Then it comes down to any impediments and or the timing associated with potential development of those. And that is the crux of it. And they're also in a very high fire hazard severity zone. So the council aligning with what the AG's guidance was, and the downtown only option, which was studied in the EIR, opted to not include very high fire hazard severity zones. So that would be 7, 8, and 9 in the growth geometries identified by the council. So no BART lots, no Deer Hill corridor, no De Silva properties, because those are all in high fire hazard zones. So the council directed that. I believe it was a 4-to-1 vote. And so we're moving forward with the revisions to the housing element based on that. Council also directed staff to bring back a tiered version, so it wouldn't be a uniform density throughout the downtown. It would be higher, closer to the freeway, step down towards the boulevard, step down south of the boulevard, stepping down with the topography of the area. And as you go from, you know, proximity to the freeway to proximity to single family residential along Moraga Boulevard, et cetera. So that was the direction from the council. We are working on that. And as I said, we anticipate bringing that to the Planning Commission first meeting in January, on January 3rd. So we'll provide you with materials ahead of time. Separate topic,
Wait, so can I ask a question before you
Sure.
move on? I lost track of two things you were saying. One, for the EIR comments, were those comments from HCD or from the public or the council?
the public.
Okay, the public. And then, did you say council's direction was to not include BART?
Correct. So the preferred option as the matter came out of GPAC, Planning Commission, Council, and then our initial submittal to HCD included BART.
Mhm.
It's surface parking lots. The property owners indicated a desire to ultimately redevelop and put in housing and affordable housing. So clearly, in my view, that is an opportunity right there for those sites, 11 acres. It comes down to timing and resources to do that. And BART has not committed to that and won't commit to that between now and the housing element deadline. Also, the site is in a very high fire hazard severity zone, as is De Silva. And so I think conservatively, the council determined to not propose housing in very high fire hazard severity zones or any increase, and thus downtown only, and directed a tiered approach, stepping down
Okay,
as one moves south from the freeway.
okay, thank you.
What's happening to the objective standards that were being crafted for the BART lots?
I think I heard the question be what happened to the objective standards for the that would be applied to the BART lots. Those are just placed on pause. The council, in its direction to not include BART, not include De Silva, not include any of the sites in very high fire hazard severity zone, directed that those zones be stricken from the EIR project description as a way of clearly indicating to the public advocating against inclusion that they were not being included. And so that'll be a revision to the EIR, and also articulated in the housing element and CEQA findings.
One other question, what is do you remember offhand what the buffers will be now? Or what the range of the buffers, have they decreased substantially, or
Do they decrease
have
substantially?
they decreased? I mean, I remember when we discussed it, the buffer was a big point of, or top, point of conversation and decision-making point.
Agreed. My recollection is the overall buffer is around 40%, but the one that is driving the kind of minimum densities is the very low buffer, which is right at 20%.
Commissioner Person.
Thank you, Chair. So I've kept up with the city council and with the direction that's going on the housing element. I didn't listen to both of the meetings, just kept general oversight since we work so much on this. Like the one thing I'm still a little bit not lost on, but the issue of we got more housing units because we have a BART line, right? And then our BART property is supposed to be open to building, but yet now we're not building there, but we keep our numbers high because we have a BART line. Let's say the egg and the chicken, and however you want to look at this analogy, it seems a little bit weird and or silly and or nonsensical in a sense. And I'm not talking about by the city, but just generally the way this is being, look, we got additional units because of BART. The property is supposed to be open to building. We say yes, but now it's no, and yet we keep the numbers at the same level. Like, what was the general thought process there? If that question makes sense.
It makes sense. So the state issued for, okay. So the Bay Area has 471,125, somewhere in that realm, housing units to accommodate. And there was a year-long RHNA methodology process by which the methodology was discussed, proposed, revised, etc. And I'm trying to pull up an email wherein I can pull, there were roughly a dozen different criteria which could have been used to apply to the RHNA allocation and weighting them. One, the primary basis for the city of Lafayette appealing its RHNA allocation was the fact that half of the city is in a very high fire hazard severity zone, and no acknowledgement of that. Well, I take that back. ABAG acknowledged that. However, it did not weigh whatsoever into the RHNA allocation we got. A community with all the same other factors that had 0% of its community in a high fire hazard zone would have gotten the same numbers as us. A community with 100% high fire hazard would have gotten the same numbers because it was simply not factored in as a final factor. And that was not by oversight. It was by, we clearly advocated housing jobs balance, recognition of natural hazards like unmitigated sea level rise and high fire hazard, and others. Ultimately, of those dozen potential factors, only 3 were factored in, and those were proximity to jobs by automobile being foremost, proximity to jobs by transit, and access to high resource areas. And I think high resource areas was a very big factor. And we're a community with high resources.
So then, bad question on my part. So I agree with everything you just said in terms of what we've done. I wasn't talking about what we did in response to that, we as in the city of Lafayette. I guess my point / question is, they took the part about us having a BART stop into consideration to give us a certain number of housing element numbers that we had to meet. That was part of the criteria. Set aside the high fire, set everything else aside. So we included BART as a part of it, but now they come back and say you shouldn't include BART because it's not going to be timely and BART isn't going to be on board, etc. How are we getting hit on both ends of that? We get higher numbers because of BART, but yet we can't use BART to make up those numbers.
Correct.
Does that make sense? I mean, and the city council just said, they're elected, that's what they're supposed to do. So the city council basically said, we're just not going to essentially push back on that. We're just going to let it go and just focus in on the downtown. I mean, that's just where they ended up. I mean, was that a discussion though, to push back to say we still want to use BART in our numbers?
It was, and then I think there was, so I think the council did decide to push back on it, and we did push back on it and appealed our arena allocation, and all but one partial appeal was granted, and it was.
Oh no, yeah, I'm sorry. I meant the housing element. So we sent the housing element in. They came back and said, "Nah, we don't think you should be using the BART properties because of timing." We didn't push back then and say, no, we should, because you included numbers for us because of BART. Why are you not letting us include this? I mean, that's the timing I'm saying. Was there pushback there, or is it just a matter of, you use the word conservative to say, we're just going to be conservative, take out those 3 other areas and just focus in on downtown?
Yeah, my read of the conversation is that the council likely would have chosen to push back if there were additional time, if there were more time between now and the deadline for
Got it.
Housing elements being due and the potential risk of builder's remedy, which would, essentially allow a developer to propose a project that's wholly inconsistent with the general plan and zoning, because we don't have general plan and zoning while we're in that limbo time. So recognizing that, I think the council concluded that the safest, best bet and closest one to get to an approvable housing element was to not try to make the case yet again to HCD, and you're the disconnect between being allocated additional units but then not being able to count a surface parking lot with a supportive property owner. I fully share that the just lack of understanding of that rationale on the part of HCD. I think the council recognized that that is HCD's prerogative. They don't have to explain themselves in that regard, or we don't necessarily have to agree with it. And so they determined to go the route of downtown only.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sturm?
Well, plus, if you think about it, I mean, our BART location has surface parking, but not every BART station does. So it did seem to make sense for us, in different scenarios to utilize that space. But then the other reason for the allocation is just the proximity to BART. So even if we're not using that acreage that's allowed, that's, BART owns around the station, our whole town still has that close proximity to public transit. But I wanted to ask a clarifying question. the concern about the high fire hazard severity zone, that came from the council. That wasn't from HCD. Is that right?
HCD, I don't believe commented on high fire hazard whatsoever. A separate entity at the state, not the one advocating for housing, which I believe it's fair to say HCD is, but the one that is concerned about placing new housing in fire vulnerable areas. The AG's office issued this guidance, and there's a tension between the HCD and the AG in that HCD is saying more housing, and AG is saying don't put it in high fire hazards. I mean, that is a very crude paraphrasing, but and I think that, you know, that may align with what ABAG's conclusion was. Well, no one is telling you or forcing you to put it in high fire hazard. You could put it elsewhere, put it in non-high fire hazard areas, which is ultimately, I think, what the council is aligning with.
Thank you. I think you had a second item you wanted to bring up.
Second item, also related to housing, but an actual project, not forward planning. The terraces of Lafayette, you'll recall that application came in March 2011, was processed to a point where city worked with the developer to come up with a project alternative. The homes at Deer Hill, 44 homes, developer was willing to build with a community park. That was approved by the council in 2015, ultimately referended by ballot measure L in 2018, did not pass, thus undone. Thus the terraces application resumed, which was approved in 2020, my recollection. That decision was the subject of a lawsuit by Save Lafayette, based on CEQA grounds and inconsistency with general plan and zoning. So that went through the trial court, and the trial court ruled in the favor of the developer and the city and the developer. And then Save Lafayette appealed that. The appeals court heard oral argument in November, and in late November issued the ruling. It's not final, but will be in the forthcoming weeks, upholding the trial court's conclusion, their findings. So there is the opportunity to appeal to the state Supreme Court. If the court decides not to hear it and the appeals court ruling holds, the developer can move forward with construction. So that's where the case currently stands.
Thank you. Has there been discussion off topic, but about returning to in-person meetings
Yes.
in 2023?
So I think the governor's office has issued direction that the state of emergency will cease in March of next year. And coincident with that, the city council will begin meeting in person again. So it's we're essentially in Q1 of next year, planning on going back, resuming in-person meetings, albeit hybrid meetings for the big four. So council, planning commission, design review, and Transcirc. And then, so there are technological tools in the two meeting rooms that allow for hybrid meetings. So people will be able to follow along at home, and anticipated to allow public comment to be remote as well, kind of like they are during Zoom meetings. So that's that timing as best I know it now.
And is that anticipation, it would be planning commissioners in person, but the hybrid option would be for like consultants who are calling in, or public comment. Is that,
Yeah,
kind of what-
the hybrid option is primarily to serve the public. And certainly, I think, Jean Iceberg is a contract planner and she might be able to participate remotely from the East Bay rather than coming out to Contra Costa.
yeah,
So I think that would be available, but the expectation, I think I think state law will essentially disallow remote participation on the part of council members and commissioners, that the expectation is that they be in the meeting room so that members of the public can voice their concerns directly and in person. So that's and I think to some degree staff as well, albeit I think we would like to accommodate, if one planner has one item that they need not be in the room the entire night and waiting, they could be sitting at the office or at their home office doing other business or attending to other things until the time that they're needed for the item.
thank you. Any questions for Greg? Commissioner Stern?
Just an update on interviewing to fill our 7th seat.
I'll update on interviewing. Currently, we've received no applications for the vacant planning commission seat. So encourage you again. I have one member of the public who I've identified to reach out to see if they would be willing. But your networks, if you can do some outreach, that would be much appreciated. So that's planning commission, and then there's the staff side of things. Nothing too concrete to report yet, but we have been doing some interviews recently, and I hope I have very good news to report at our next meeting.
Speaking of next meeting, is there a meeting on the calendar for the 19th?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm bringing up the tentative agenda to see what is on it. 2 items currently tentatively scheduled. It would be a return of the Oak Hill project. So Blockbuster Video, that area, 1007. Yeah, I see smiles with the aged reference.
Can you just remind us though, was that coming back based off of our last meeting, were we requesting that would come back on consent calendar or actually as a continued item?
It would be a continued item,
Okay.
and there's a high likelihood that it would be a joint meeting with 1 or 2 other bodies, those being Parks, Trails and Recreation and Design Review Commission. The former being a function of the project increasing in size to 53 units. I think 51 was the earlier count, but more that the initial submittal was for a rental project, and given market conditions, that is the pro forma on that has changed to the point where in order to ensure feasibility, the applicant has indicated that they'll be submitting a condo map, or essentially being able to subdivide it, and thus it may require continuance and into the future, because that hasn't been submitted yet, but we still have it tentatively for the 19th. Oh, and so to connect that, the subdivision allows the city and the Parks, Trails, Recreation Commission to evaluate the project and make a recommendation to the Planning Commission regarding whether to have the project dedicate actual land for parkland purposes or the in lieu fee, which it would be subject to under 50 units, or if it's preferable to do that even over 50 units.
Yeah, with the application potentially changing or aspects of the application changing, do the number of meetings start over or no?
Potentially,
Okay.
but at most it would be
Depends.
5,
Yeah.
even with a reset. And then the second item is a minor subdivision. Don't know much about it at this point, but it's slated for 30 minutes. I think it's a pretty straightforward minor sub.
Okay. So knowing that, if we could, I just want to quickly poll people. I know personally, I plan on being off, but at home, you know, so I can attend on that day, the 19th. Are others, basically, do we have a quorum of people in town? If we could just quickly, Commissioner Farsan, that's a yes. Sturm is a yes, Labange is a yes. So that, okay. Perfect, so yes,
5,
perfect,
potentially
Yeah.
6. Great.
okay, great.
So through the chair, can I ask a question, Greg? If the applicant doesn't get the paperwork in for the condo map, would you still hold the meeting just for the minor sub? Or if you have to continue the 53 unit project, would we not have a meeting on the 19th?
We would do our best to work with the applicant of the minor sub to have it go into January.
Okay.
Now, that said, we have to be cognizant of the housing element being the large item for January 3rd. So
Right.
if we did have the one on the 19th, it would likely be pretty short.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, just make sure there's nothing else on the agenda, assuming that's the end of your director's report. Thank
Correct.
you. 9:28, we will adjourn the meeting. And thank you to everybody. See you in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Hey, good luck,
Bye.
Greg.
Thank you.
Yes.
For
Good luck.
anybody who wants more information, please feel free to reach out to me individually and I can update you. I've been leaning on Anna a lot for all this. So again,
Happy
thank you.
to. Yeah, happy to.